Okay, on today's video, I'm going to talk about how you're actually going to be able to get the most value out of a existing, or perhaps in the future, a person that you're going to have help you with your PPC, whether that is an internal team or a person, a consultant, or even an agency, so that you can get the maximum value out of them, and pretty much we'll just say at least twice as much, if not 3-4 times as much out of that person you hire, even if you don't actually know much of anything about PPC advertising. This is what this is for. Of course, if you know a lot about PPC advertising, it's even better, but I'm just saying here, what the advice I'm about to give you here to get a lot better results from who you're hiring will be, it's mostly still usable, or you're going to get similarly the results as you would get if you knew all about it. And of course, you don't know quite everything about everything, otherwise you wouldn't be a lot of times hiring somebody, not always, because more than half of the reason why you hire somebody is just because there's so much work involved with building ads and landing pages and monitoring, tracking, and so on and so forth, that you have, even if you didn't know everything, you would still at the very least want a team behind you to put things together, make banner ads, so on and so forth. But obviously, just based upon, I know for my agency, more than half of the people are doing hiring because they don't know how to do it, and they just think there's a trick or whatever that will get them the results they need. Whereas, as I said many times in other videos, yes, you do have to know what you're doing, but more than that, a lot of times, or most of the time, it's actually being able to and being willing to take the next step forward to do more work than anybody else, so that you can add more detail and better depth, and then therefore offer a better user experience to all the users that you're trying to attract or are attracting, so that you get a better return from your return on your ad spend that way. So anyway, long story short, I have a list of things that I would like to cover on today's video about how to do this. So the very first thing, though, I want to talk to you about here today is, or comment I made here, or should I say, you know how to hire. Now you need to know how to work your team to be able to get the most out of them, which is what this is about. And a lot of people do not get this right, which is the reason I took some time out to actually give you some at least high-level pointers so you don't get totally hosed. Everybody that hires, business owners that hire consultants and stuff, they're always worried about getting snowed if they don't know anything about what they're doing, whether it's a specialized lawyer or whatever. So obviously, part of getting the results from them is being able to know that you cannot be snowed. And there's a way that you can do it with the strategy here, so they know it, and then they will be on top of their game and focus on you versus some other people who they can snow, let's say, and keep them as a client, which is a part of the benefit out of all of this. But also, with that said, it also just, even if they know what they're doing, points them in it makes things a lot more efficient, because you can all work towards a common goal that you yourself and they actually know that is where the goalpost actually is with this thing. So they're just randomly trying for anything. You have very specific goal that you're trying to reach with this whole campaign and investment into ads and the agency or the person, and you're not going to accept any less, basically, or you're not going to accept targeting something else because this is what you want, and that it is what it is there. So going on to the next step here, how to build a strategy to get at least twice as much done and results to follow, or regardless of whoever you use. So like I said, based upon doing things this way, you can get 2, 3, 4 times the amount of results from your agency over time. PPC is still a process. Don't ever think that, of course you can get short-term results, if you have a less competitive or wide market, the person that you're working with really knows what they're doing, but it's still usually, it's going to take 6, 12, 18, 24 months to get really good results on your campaign, and you're layering on efficiency improvements on top of efficiency improvements on top of efficiency improvements over time, using the data in your account to be able to, through a process of elimination, steer everything to what works the best, because you don't have the data when you start out to be able to do that all the way, and the hundreds of hours of work just starts accumulating in terms of bringing in the next strategy and the next strategy and the next strategy, so on and so forth, to get your results that way or from that. Here's how routinely you're going to start out the process. Let's say you hired somebody today. These are the things that I would recommend that you do. For the most part, this is going to work for you, because I also run my own team, and I also work with clients, and I got clients that don't know what they need, and I got to be able to offer them a guarantee up front. And so this is the way, because I'm forced to get the expectations aligned and to where both parties know what it is that we should be going for and that it'll work. If I promise them something that doesn't make them money, we get there, I wasted my time and their time because they're not going to stay. And also, of course, we need something tangible to go after, or I can't guarantee anything. And that's, by the way, what we do here. We guarantee clients results. They pay for results initially after we've actually done the work. And if we don't get to that specific goal, then we don't take any fees. And as a side note to all this, a lot of this, so it all kind of just starts and is predicated around tracking. Tracking is, as I've mentioned on other videos, is only so good. The more expensive the product or service you're selling, the less less of a view, or the less you'll be able to see in terms of measuring the actions on your site and how that contributes to a sale. Because then the more expensive it is, the more time people have to research, and a lot of times people will go to your site and click on your ads before they even come close to wanting to make a purchase. They're just looking around like you would go to a clothing store. You look around, come back, buy later. But in this case, it's just directly proportional, as I've found over the years. The more expensive it is of a thing that you're offering, whether product or service, the less you're going to be able to see. So if you set a goal, if you have a very expensive thing, of course, even if you generate leads, you need to be able to see if that turned into revenue. If you have something that's over $200, what I would recommend to you for sure is to be able to set an overall revenue goal in your company, and do kind of like as I've described on my other videos before, where let's say you're at $1 million in sales now, you want to invest $3,000 a month into ads, you start the program up, you want a 10-to-1 return. So ultimately you're going to try to get the sales from $1 million a year to $1,036,000, because that would be a 10-to-1 return that would be $1,360,000. So ultimately, and yes, I hear all the time, well, Corey, I have all these other traffic sources. As far as marketing goes, they're consistent for the most part. Do your increase in one channel so you can see how you could measure things as good as possible, which can be your PPC. You'll go through these actions, and then you'll be able to see if your revenue goes up to the target revenue rate that you're looking for or not. And you can go 3 years back, and you can write your average revenue, your revenue by month going back 3 years. And then if you are at $30,000 a month in sales for June, July, and August, the past 3 years, and you're investing the $3,000 a month in ads, and you want a 10-to-1 return, well, of course, instead of $30,000, the target $60,000. You'll let your PPC person or team or agency go to work with, what you guys work together to develop up front as far as goals and their strategy, and then, you'll know if they basically did their job or not a lot more accurately than only tracking and seeing if somebody clicked on the ad and then right away purchased, because that becomes less and less accurate the more expensive of whatever it is you're selling, to the point where if you're only looking and trying to tell if a campaign is profitable or not just by looking at the tracking for $1,000 item, it will look totally not profitable. It will be in actuality in terms of all the pipeline of people you build up that first find your site and then have to come back later on. If you looked at your overall revenue and how that is being carried up through this through the process of building the ads, it would make sense. But if you just look through the account, this is the reason why I mention this is just such a common mistake that people make all the time. Corey, it looks like the ads are doing 2-to-1 return for my $700 mattress. Well, it says on paper or through the ad account 2-to-1, but if you count all the people who wait 2 months and then they come back to buy and they type in your brand name, then you don't see that purchase. And I can assure you the 30% of your sales that says comes from direct in terms of the source and like Google Analytics, a lot of that's your PPC. So that should make you kind of understand as well that, yeah, a lot of the sales that are coming in, they're being initially influenced and discovered through one channel, but then they're coming back through another channel later on. People switch devices all the time. A lot of times people don't have cookies on their computer. Different browsers, devices aren't even using cookies anymore by default. So anyway, I got that general caveat or disclaimer, if you will, out of the way. So anyway, how do you start out the relationship? With that known, the first thing is you do a projection. So 8 quarters out at least. What I do here for all of our clients, again, to be able to establish goals with the client so we can know what our guarantee should be, and so that they can see visually if they're making money from our service once they have to pay it, because they have to pay a monthly fee once we get to whatever we agree on is going to work. We do an 8-quarter projection for the client up front, and we look into all their numbers, their margins, their close rates, and so on and so forth, so we can see, first of all, on an average monthly basis going back 3, 6, 12 months, what are our average monthly results? And if it's seasonal, we do it by month. And from there, we factor in lifetime value of a customer we're attributing to everything. If we're doing lead generation, close rates, conversion rate to lead, conversion rate to sale, average lifetime value of a customer. If we look at the books in the last 3 years, we'll find out what it averages out at. And yes, you can actually come up with that number. People like to tell me, oh, it's all over the place. Well, over a 3-year period, you got an average, and this is a long-term proposition, so you should be able to assume in the next 3 years it'll be about the same. Obviously, it's a different channel you might be doing, so it might be a little different there. And then you find out how much money after your ad spend, and then you put in there for your overhead. So if you have a 60% cost of goods, you take that out, and after your cost of goods and your ad spend, what do you have left over and from what you are spending already or where you're at right now? Once you've actually done that, then you could figure out, okay, I'm losing money. We need to have double the sales on the same ad spend in order to make money. So then that could be potentially your goal. And then it's just a matter of figuring out how long you think it takes to get there. And so I know our normal rate of improvement on an account, and just by looking at the account itself and comparing it to other accounts I've worked for in the same category, we could figure out how long it is. 60 days, then we assume that average monthly results that we have will now be producing this. After 90 days, our average monthly results should be producing this. After 2 quarters have went by, our average monthly results should be producing this. And so we physically find out in which quarter of the relationship we should be able to reach enough sales. So if they were making money before, which if it was going good, you wouldn't be coming to me in the first place, generally speaking. Nobody comes to me when things are great. That we figure, okay, well, looks like based upon our average rate of improvement on an account like this and what we've gotten in the past, it'll take 2 quarters to reach to your goal of taking that same $3,000 a month in ad spend and generating the actual $30,000 a month in sales you're looking for, extra $30,000. So we'll do everything up front for free until we get you to the $30,000 extra in sales. And then we'll start charging a monthly fee of a couple $1,000s a month from there to keep taking you through more improvements on your account and then stacking the results that we got for you up to then on. And then we'll go out 8 quarters in advance. So we do that so that we can develop a goal. I know that was kind of side information, but specifically because we do 8 quarters, and we want to know either way we want our client to have realistic expectations so that when they get into it, there's no chance of them being disappointed because they know exactly what doubling their leads or doubling their transactions will do. And they're forced to know that so that when we get into it, they know exactly what we're supposed to do. We know what we're supposed to do. And we're not going to get into it for 9 months and have the person scratch their head and say, is it working? Oh, it doesn't seem like it's working. I quit. Or whatever. So you should do that. And you should work with the agency to make sure that they can do that for you. And if it can't estimate for you what the results are going to be to some degree, or at least do those projections so you can figure out with your expenses what the ads have to do for you to be viable, to keep running and or expand the ads, because basically at some point you'll want to expand the ads to get the full value out of them, or scale them, in other words. So you have to figure out those numbers up front. They should do that for you, or find and if you can't get it, find an agency that will, basically, bottom line. Beyond that, you're going to set up the tracking to verify each one of those quarterly benchmarks. So if it's leads you need to track, you set up lead tracking on the forums, on the calls that you have coming in using CallRail or a call tracking provider like that. If you need to track e-commerce checkouts, you track that. And then I would recommend going one step further if you're doing lead generation to track people that purchase offline, like through the phone, and then get that imported into the ad account so you can optimize off that and kind of see that way. But if you have that and or you have an item that's more than $200, like I was talking about before, you'll want to track overall sales revenue to kind of see things. But ultimately you should have some sort of as best tracking as you can, and you'll use overall sales tracking that you have in your company through your accounting program to have a second indication of how well things are really working and be your last stop for seeing if it's actually profitable or not. You want to track so that your projection sheet, if it says we need to have, ultimately you're trying to break it down to where you can see with your close rates and all that you need 36 leads on 3,000 in order to, after all those leads close and we get all our value out of each contract with our expenses, we know we got an 8-to-1 return, we're viable, we can scale the ad spend at that point. And if you need to track cart sales, obviously you do it that way. So in general, that's what's going on. And if you have something super expensive, it's a little harder, but you could still probably factor in going through your past data, how understated it is for the reasons I said before, that on expensive items you can only track so much through the ads, but it's going to be consistently undercounted. And if it's undercounted by a third, well then at least you need to add 2/3 to that, and you can actually still get back to the point where you have actual tangible benchmarks starting out for your projections of where you need to be at, and for each kind of stage or each quarter that you've been working with this person or team. So the next thing is you identify actual strategies that your team, and just to mention here again, just to really hammer it home, you should find out how many leads you need to be able to realistically hit a certain ROI for your account, or how many cart sales you need to hit to a certain ROI after your expenses, and so on and so forth. When you have it, and then them being able to tell you how long it's going to take, specifically that's the important part. Once you've done that, identify the strategies that team or person that's helping you will be able to use to get you there for at least 6 months. So basically, if they think it's going to be 6 months time working on the account to get you to that point where you and them both know that that's acceptable in terms of ROI by then, and potentially can start scaling it then you want them to tell you the overall strategies just at a very high level, so it sounds like you know what you're talking about, so they'll, again, be a little bit scared. And then write those, or have them write it down and send it to you so that you could come back to that later. The next one is, from there, you're going to want monthly reports from them that show that how you're trending from the start. So if you're tracking leads and you know you need to hit 36 leads per month on a 3K ad spend to be able to get a 10-to-1 return or whatever, well then they're going to chart that information out, and every month they're going to show you how close to the 36 you are, and then each month the data is going to be stacked on top of it, so you can see you're here. This month we're here, this month we're here, and just how much are you on track to hit it or not? And and with that, you are going one step further. You're going to ask for handwritten comments stating why the goals are not met if needed. So in other words, if they get into month 3 and they didn't hit your first quarter estimates or projections of what you thought you would be by quarter 1 at the end of quarter 1, have them explain, based upon the list of strategies they said they had to do to get you there, either they didn't work or they didn't do them yet. So they think that you have, again, some insight about what's going on, so they'll really try as hard as they can, if you will, or focus on you versus other clients, which is what a lot of this agency stuff is about, by the way, as you probably could imagine, just from an insider's point of view. And the last thing is you get the new quarterly or biannual strategy summaries like that every quarter, and you rinse and repeat that. So in other words, in 6 months, if you hit the goal, you're going to want the next 6 months worth of high-level strategies they're going to have. You have them send that to you so they know that they have to do those, and that ultimately in your monthly reports, you want every monthly report some handwritten from the person strategizing, or main guy working on the account, or main gal working on the account. You have the numbers there in the chart that shows you how close, in terms of numerically, how close you are to the goal. But it also says of that strategy list they gave you, how far the way through it, and speak of that specifically until that whole strategy list is done, and then you have the next one they come out with. Basically, you could be every 3 to 6 months they get you a new list of strategies, but so if it's 6 months, it's 6 months. They just have to comment every month about how far they are through it and how things are going, specifically nailed down to that list. And then ultimately, again, because based upon them not hitting their numbers, them telling you what was wrong with it or whatever, at least then when you know that you've got through that list, the logically knowing you're going to come out with another list, you're never going to be in the dark on where things are at. And in terms of getting in the weeds, you don't have to get in the weeds, and you don't have to really know too much about PPC to be able to do that for yourself and your company. So whereas you have them do a projection up front for you before you ever start doing PPC or with them, and you set up the tracking to be able to track the goal that you and them physically forced yourself to be able to verify up front that you need for your campaign to keep going with it long term, or to scale it perhaps, or just in general need to get to in a 6-9 month type of time period, which you still have time to actually evaluate, are they the agency for you, and give you a strategy list. That, by the way, all that stuff comes up front before you do anything at all. Once you've done all that kind of prep work, you're way ahead of the game. So when you get the first report, you're just simply checking, are we getting more leads than before, and how close are we to our goal, to where I know we need to be profitable. Then the next month, the same thing. And then you're just reading of the strategy list, here's where we're at. This is how many are done. With all of this, usually after, a lot of people don't give agencies or people enough time to really see what's going on, because there's an ad algorithm. No matter how good your ads are, the ad algorithm needs to be able to evaluate the ads you have and to give you the benefit of the doubt that they are actually better and reduce your cost per click. It's a big thing also people make a mistake on, but in 12 months, for the most part, you're going to be able to see, can they actually do what they said that they were going to do for you to hit your numbers, to initially hit profitability there or whatever, if they can do it or not. And even if they're off a little bit, you know you need to get to 36, but they were trending up and you got to 25, and you see that in your chart in the report that they give you every month, you could just probably stay with them. You'll know in 12 months if you should fire them specifically, because maybe I would ultimately say as long as you got halfway to your goal, I would just stay with them. It's much easier to stay with somebody like that than to have unravel the whole thing with somebody else. But if they're only 25% of the way, but it's trending upwards, then maybe you stay anyway. Where you have a problem or run into trouble, generally speaking, is what I've seen, is the results have been flat for the last 6 months and you're only 25% of the way. That would be a warning signal to me that I probably have to work with a different agency. But if you do all this work ahead of time for yourself, you don't have to know if you're not going to hire this agency or not. Don't put yourself in the position to say at the end of it, we got more calls. How many? Because that's where you make a mistake and they fool you into it's working good, because they're always going to say it's working good. I hear people say all the time, you get into meetings with an agency, oh, everything is going great, it's great. And then really, it's not going great, but you're not in position to be able to, to know that. You don't have to prove it to them. That's not what it's about. It's knowing it yourself, so you know that agency can get you to your number, and that pretty much then sums it up on why you do this. So you know what to expect out of this agency, and keeping it very simple, and then having them be able to, because they know what you expect, they can deliver to you information that speaks of that exact goal that is narrowed down to the exact thing that you need, the exact numbers that you need. What strategies they use to get there is irrelevant. Can they hit their numbers or not? If not, you need another agency. But that'll keep them sufficiently scared enough to not, they'll think that you know what the strategies mean, to give you a really good strategy list and to use those strategies to hit your numbers. Versus if you leave it wide open in an interpretation where they say, I don't know what our results will be, we'll just get started. They'll do less work. They're going to do as least work as they think they can get away with, for the most part, most agencies, 9 out of 10. And then you'll get into it 6 months and they'll say everything is going good. You won't know if the 30% increase that they gave you is good enough or not. And because you don't have a sufficient chart to see if it's trending upwards, or if they got the first 20% and then it died the last 3 months, to whether to decide to cut and run or not. But you get the general idea and gist of where I'm going here with all of this. It's like war. You do enough preparation here, you win by default. Even if the agency sucks, you can hire somebody else, and you'll know when to hire somebody else, and you'll eventually find somebody who can hit your quote-unquote number. That's, in a nutshell, what I would recommend to you, being maybe a novice in PPC, to hire the right company, because somebody who won't give you projections will weed themselves out, and to be able to know if you need to switch agencies after a period of time and when, be able to do so. Even if you know what you're doing and know the strategies, it's pretty much the same thing. You still have to, which most people are not going to do, 98% of people are not going to do, project out and figure out the exact number of leads or sales they need to hit the ROI goals that they need, and then being able to project when it should happen, so you know specifically when to start worrying. Oh, it's only been 3 months. I knew it was supposed to take 6 months, so no, I'm not going to complain here. Oh, in 6 months it didn't happen. And then having your report already saying specifically why it didn't happen, so you don't even have to ask. It's just on the report. It didn't happen because of this. Okay, we'll give it 6 more months. Oh, it didn't happen because of this. Well, at least I have some information on the exact thing I need to evaluate, and I don't have to work very hard to get it. Hopefully you like this video. I have a lot of other videos just like this on this channel about individual PPC strategy you can use to make money, and that we use on our guaranteed campaigns that we use for our clients to guarantee their results. If you'd like step-by-step type of directions and information on how to build PPC campaigns that work basically every time, you can go to my site. guaranteedppc.com/blog. I have really good quality information there along those same lines. And of course, if you have any questions about hiring an agency and actually figuring out how to get the most out of them, other than what I just covered here on this video, leave a comment down below and I will certainly get back to you and answer any question that you have about this so that you can make the right decision and can get through it without too much stress and without losing out on too much for yourself. Make it easy on yourself to be able to manage somebody to get you the results that you know.